Today, I want to share with you about doing one practice that can change everything in your life. It can open up everything if you do this one thing. And I'll explain how, if you do this one thing, how it can open up everything in your life, from your relationship to yourself, to relationship to other people, to whatever results you get in your life. How much money you have, how you feel at work, how you feel with your body, your bodily health, everything. So let me start with a story. In my early 20s, really my entire adolescence, I was pretty angsty. I wasn't generally a happy person, though I tried to be. I was really hardworking, but I kind of worked in a poverty consciousness kind of way, so I didn't really earn the kind of money that I wanted. I kind of smelled bad. Honestly, because I lived out of my car a lot and I was pretty righteous about not taking a shower and living off the land and all this stuff. I was also like a high performance climber and I was obsessed with that. I ate terribly. I was very fit, but I was not healthy. Generally speaking, I was headed down this path of like micro growth throughout the years, right? I was kind of staying the same. My relationships were pretty intense and then crashed. Romantic relationships, my relationships with my friends were like pretty deep, but I was a pretty, and my friends have told me this actually, who knew me then, I was a pretty irritable person, right? And I just didn't have a lot of internal or external stability. I finally got into meditation, stumbled my way upon it by going to grad school where they had a meditation course. And I picked up this book of a spiritual master from Tibet, and he talked about the power of counting your breaths. So I was like, you know what? I'm studying meditation. I might as well learn how to do this. I was camping at the time with some young adults who were suffering from addictions. We were in the middle of desert Utah, and I was leading vision quests. I've been trained on how to do that, so I'd done some things like that where we'd put them out on the land for 3 days. They would go within, and they weren't like starving themselves, but they were having a solo experience and being sober and looking back on their life. It was very powerful and very cool, and I'd done some of that work myself. Looking back, I probably wasn't the best person to lead those kinds of things, but they allowed me to, and I did a pretty good job, and the students seemed to get a good experience out of it. Anyway, during one of these vision quests, I was like, I'm going to practice meditation. So I, again, was pretty anxious, kind of irritable and angry, sort of depressed. I go through these depressive episodes. I feel very lonely in my life. I was always looking for a partner and trying to date over and over again. Anyway, I'm like, I'm going to read this book, and I'm going to do what this guy says. So he talked about counting the breath. His whole book, his name was the Sakyong Mipam. I think he actually got into some trouble with how being inappropriate with students recently. Anyway, he was a good meditation teacher at that time. And he did something, he was a master, and he said there's a lot of value in this, so I gave it a shot. I sat down and I could get to about 3 breaths I could count before I lost count. So the technique is you take a breath and you count it. Pretty simple, inside of yourself. And if you lose count, you have to start over. Well, it took me hours and hours to do this, but he said the goal was to get to 108 breaths. So I worked really hard to get up to 20, 30, I'd lose my count. And then one day I got to 108 breaths and I wanted to keep going. And something really clicked for me that day. Because I finished the practice, I closed the practice. It took me, I think, an hour and a half or something. And this sense of peace came over me and spaciousness, and the view of my life was like zoomed out, and I could see the condition of my life and how I was unsatisfied with it, but I loved how I felt right then. And it's like I could see the whole plateau of, metaphorically and literally, where we were at that time. I could see for miles. And I was like, oh my God, I want more of this. And so I started a disciplined meditation practice. Now, that's not the one practice I want you to do, because I know people, you've probably heard many times, meditate and everything will be better. And it's true, but you don't have to. But this practice is about following the breath, becoming aware of your breath. And in my example, counting the breaths, and they become more and more slow, and your mind becomes more and more serene. Following the breath and having a breath practice where just you follow your breath for 10 breaths a day, it will start to radically shift your life. And here's why. Number one, you're going to access a new way of feeling. You'll find that how you are with yourself will soften, how you are with other people will soften. You'll be less anxious, less depressed, less frenetic, less stressed. All of your situations will change, and this space will get created inside of you that will be reflected in the perspective you have in your life. Meaning, just by following your breath, I'm going to use this example, for 10 breaths a day, You'll start to just be more calm, more chill. You'll be more focused. You'll be more productive. And your perspective on what you want in your life and what you have will become to shift. It'll be so beautiful. Because here, look, this is what happens when you kind of are in our life. Everything is really unpleasant because we're this close, right? This is pretty unpleasant. And I think this is how many of us live our lives. Just like looking at things this close and we don't have any space, we get anxious, you know what I'm saying? So I'll stop being unpleasant with you. But that's the metaphor of how a lot of us are, and sometimes how I still am in my life. I'm smacked up against a situation. I can't see any larger perspective where I'm going or where I've been that's helpful, and we're just in it. So following the breath and having this breath practice just has us create some space, right? Number 2, we get less stressed. There's all kinds of research about how mindfulness will have us be less stressed. We won't be as impulsive in decisions. We won't revert to old habitual patterns of thinking and feeling and decision making. We won't be as reactive towards people or situations. All these ways of feeling and thinking that we've taken on from our families over the years unconsciously, all this programming that we have that we're really unaware of, just by following the breath for 10 breaths will have us become more aware of those patterns. And we'll be like, oh, that's a pattern. It's not me. That's a habit, an internal habit. That's not actually who I am or who I want to be. So we'll become less stressed. And thirdly, we'll become more open and humble. And I'm telling you, if you can become more open and humble in your life, you will start to get so much more of what you want. Why? Because practicing openness and humility makes us great students in the universe, we could say, or the inner self loves people that are open and humble because we can be taught things. And just the fact that we can admit we need to learn things. I'm still learning things. I love being a student. It sounds not humble to say this, but I love being humble. I don't like broadcasting that I'm humble, because as soon as I do that, and I don't think that I actually am in many ways, but I'm more humble than I used to be, I can say that. It just opens us up to new possibilities. And when we're open and when we're humble, we have the possibility of having new beliefs about what's possible for ourselves and what's possible for our life. We have new possibilities of what we can achieve and what we can get, even with who we are. I think I was going to say hundreds, but I'll say dozens of people that were at one point not very skilled and leveraged what they knew and got better at what they knew to create amazingly successful businesses, prosperity for themselves and their family. And it all just was because of how they believed about themselves, what they believed about themselves, and about what's possible for them. So try that out. One practice of 10 breaths a day and see what happens. All my best to you.